All right, I guess the first thing I'd love to do is to have each of our panelists introduce yourselves. So let's start off, I guess, Ifeanyi, if you would like to introduce yourself, that would be great. Let's do name, what you do, where you work, and a fun fact, just because that always is a great way to get going.
All right. So yeah, Ifeanyi Gulu here. You'll see the I2 kind of tied to my name. That's a common reference as well. So Ife works, I2 works, whatever is simpler. So I currently work with Parsons. And easiest way to think about Parsons, it's kind of an engineering solutions firm, right? We do a little bit of civil infrastructure work, so like roads, airports type work, but we also do engineering solutions for the defense and intelligence side of the house as well. And fun fact, so I've been riding motorcycles since man, like 2005, all right? So I'm getting my bike serviced this Saturday, kick off the riding season. So there you go.
Very good. Good for you. Thank you so much. Let's jump to Carolyn. If you would like to go ahead and introduce yourself. So name, what you do, where you work, and a fun fact.
Yeah. So my name's Carolyn Fisk. I'm an aerospace engineer. I work at a small defense contractor called Systems Engineering Group, and we work in missile defense. So what I actually do is work with these like computer trajectory models that will predict how adversary missiles will fly. And then I'm actually about to start a new job in a few weeks as like a flight operations engineer at NASA Goddard for a contractor. And a fun fact would be that I'm currently knitting my second ever sweater. So
Wow, good for you. You've got some patience.
it's been a while, but yeah.
Oh, well, that's wonderful. Thank you. Miss Yvette, would you like to go next and introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Yvette. I am a registered nurse case manager. I work with CVS Health. We do case management for care for everyone who has care first, all across the country. One fun fact about me is I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Do I
What's
have
your favorite season?
right now? Spring.
Spring. There you go.
Spring.
There's a fun fact. That's a good one.
Yes, it's not too hot, not too cold. Spring. So today was the perfect day.
Agreed. Agreed. Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Laura, let me go ahead and switch it over to you.
Hi, my name is Laura Biagiotti, and I chair the Medical Laboratory Science program at Stevenson University, and it's partnered with Sinai Hospital in Baltimore. And what was the second question?
Fun fact.
Oh, fun fact. So my husband and I love to cook, and we make all of our own pasta fillings, and we make our own sausage. And I recently learned how to make a lamb merguez sausage, which is awesome.
Wow, that's impressive. That's a good fun fact. Well, welcome. Thank you for being here. Kathy, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Okay, hey guys, I'm Kathy Pascal, and I'm a lawyer. I'm an assistant attorney general, and I prosecute Medicaid frauds. That's doctors who defraud the Medicaid program, and abuse and neglect of vulnerable adults, people who are seniors or developmentally disabled, who live in assisted living facilities or nursing homes or group homes and are abused by their caregivers. We prosecute the caregivers. Fun fact, I'm friends with Dave Grohl, who is the lead singer for the Foo Fighters and used to be the drummer in Nirvana.
Okay, wow. Fantastic. Thank you. And last but certainly not least, if you would like to introduce yourself. What you
Greetings,
do,
Stuart
where
Capital.
you work, yeah.
Yeah. Greetings, Stuart Capital. I'm an environmental attorney in private practice, and we do a whole host of environmental work, probably spending a lot of time in the last year doing greenhouse gas and other climate solutions. Environmental law really encompasses a whole bunch of stuff that maybe we'll talk about today, but really an awful lot of opportunity in that space, probably among the fastest growing areas of the law. Fun fact, I get the opportunity from time to time to climb mountains, and without being offensive to any of you, I'd probably much rather be climbing than being here with you this evening.
Very good. Well, welcome panelists, and thank you all for being here. I think a lot of our students are all logged in. Welcome students. Just a little reminder, I know a lot of the students are signing on and where they're going to school in the chat and all that good stuff. Again, throughout the session, if there's any questions that pop up, please drop them in the chat. We'll try to get those answered for you. So let's get right into it. So I know everybody touched on what they do. I wanted to give everybody an opportunity to expand if they would like. And also, was this something you've always wanted to do? So I would love to get Yvette, if you would like to go first. Was this something you always wanted to do? And if there is anything else you'd like to share about what you do?
No, I didn't always want to be a nurse. I wanted to be a pediatrician, actually. I love nursing though.
Well,
I couldn't see myself doing anything else at this point in my life. Because of how rewarding it is and how much satisfaction I get from nursing. Yeah, I love it.
fantastic. Very good. Laura.
Oh, I'm sorry, to expand on, I'm sorry, what I
Oh,
do.
sorry,
I
didn't mean to
actually
jump
do.
the gun. Yep.
I apologize. To expand on what I actually do, I work from home, and what I do is members that have the Care First insurance, I basically do teaching over the phone, how to manage their disease, how to manage their medications, providing resources, whether it is through the insurance company or through the community for financial assistance, anything like that. I try to be a resource for the member to let them know that benefits that they have available through Care First. A lot of times it works if they follow the care plan and anything that we try to set in place for them. Usually the plan works out well. Some members have been able to overcome a lot of the challenges that they have medically. And some we just try to keep them stable where they're not in the hospital. So very rewarding as long as they work with us.
Gotcha. Very good. Great work. Okay, Laura, let me swap it over to you. I'm going to try to give each panelist at least a chance to answer, because I think it's really important for the students really to understand what you do. And we always love knowing, is this what you always wanted to do? So I want to give everybody a chance. So Laura, go ahead.
So much like probably every student that's logged into this call, I was 18 and not sure what I wanted to do with my life. And so my mom was a nurse, and I knew that based on all of her stories coming home from work that I did not want to be a nurse, but I wanted to be in healthcare and I wanted to help people. And so I started looking at allied health professions, and I stumbled into medical laboratory science. We are the ones who do all of the laboratory testing in the hospitals, LabCorp, Quest, you know, even at the government laboratories, CDC, NIH, we do all of the diagnostic testing for the patient. Most people, when they go to the hospital or ER or their doctor's office and they are written a script for blood work, somebody does that work, right? And we are the ones who do that work. Medical laboratory professionals are board certified professionals. We are highly educated, and we are the ones giving the doctor the answer to whatever's going on with that patient. And most people don't know that about 90% of their medical record is lab data. And your doctor really doesn't make treatment decisions without that data to guide them. And so I started out my career in microbiology, and for 30 years I have gotten more specialization, and I got into higher ed in 2003, and I've never looked back. My students make me happy going, you know, teaching. I teach all of the microbiology and infectious disease courses in the program. And we graduate generalists, so we can work in any area of the lab. So blood bank and transfusion medicine, microbiology, clinical chemistry, immunology, hematology, you name it. We do it all. So that's a little bit about medical lab science. So if your students love science and they love detective work and they want to get into healthcare and they don't really want to be patient facing, I think this is a really good option.
Fantastic. That was a great summary. Thank you. Let me jump to Kathy.
Okay, let's see. I always knew I wanted to go to law school, and it was because I really wasn't good with math or sciences. And so it kind of played to my strengths. I wasn't certain what kind of law I wanted to practice. And when I graduated from law school, I worked at a big law firm for about 7 years and didn't love it. And so now I work for the government. So I work for the Attorney General's office. And what I do is I criminally prosecute people who defraud the Medicaid program. And as you said earlier about the detective, it's like being a detective. It's like, to me, it's like putting together a puzzle, because we get to do things like search and seizure warrants, and we get to do undercover investigations. And, you know, it's just kind of like all the sexy stuff that you see on TV, but it's just not as sexy. But it's really rewarding and satisfying. I'd say, like, just in the past month, I have 2 big cases that got resolved, and one of them was like a dentist who billed Medicaid for $8.5 million worth of services when he actually no longer had his dental license, and he would just use other dentists' identities and bill Medicaid. And it took about 4 years to put the case together, but it was fun. It was challenging, and you know, and it's every day is kind of just creating or working on a new puzzle. So
Wow, that's amazing. Thanks for doing what you do.
yes,
I can't believe
no,
that. Yeah.
no end to it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Stuart, I'm going to roll it over to you, please.
No, very different kind of law, same overarching profession. And I must confess, I've always wanted to be an environmental lawyer related to real estate, ever since my mother took me to an environmental hearing when I think I was about 8 years old. And I apparently played in the aisle and sat there for hours through a hearing many, many years ago. The work we do today is probably a bit evolved from that. But from a science perspective, for those of you that are interested in science, I saw a very interesting statistic the other day that talks about attorneys buy more science than anybody else. And we don't think about who pays for science and how it gets done. I know we buy a lot of science. Historically, we've bought some very, very large studies. We do a lot of work both in the United States and outside the United States. Large corporations and mid-sized businesses very often need science done, and they want it done by attorneys so that it's confidential, so that others never learn about it. So we do a lot of that work, and increasingly we do that work related to greenhouse gas. Probably the hottest new field in terms of both law and maybe even science in terms of where dollars are being spent. There's a headline in the Wall Street Journal today that the Biden administration is spending over $1 trillion on greenhouse gas reduction. You know, I joke with folks that we don't need that much of the trillion to do well. But again, my other sort of introductory comment would be that one of the advantages of being an attorney, whether one works for government and prosecutes crime, or whether one works in the private sector, it is one of those professions that offers a great quality of life for a variety of reasons. It not only are attorneys generally very well paid in comparison to other attorneys, but there's great opportunity in terms of schedule, setting for workplace. It really is a career that offers true opportunities in terms of quality of life. And I think that makes a difference for a lot of folks that enter the profession.
Fantastic. Thanks, Stuart. How about Ifeanyi? Would you like to jump in?
Yeah, so I just realized I guess I skipped a phase of the intro, right, and kind of describing what I do now. So I'll cover it here. Um, I'm technically in the business development side of the house now, but also I do a little bit of what we call solution architecting, right? It's a fancy word for just engineering, right? So my background is double E, electrical engineering. Did I always want to be a double E? No. I wanted to do aeronautical, but my parents thought the school was too far. So they said, yeah, you're going to Morgan State in Baltimore. I said, all right, no problem. I get there, no aeronautical. I'm like, all right, next option is mechanical. No mechanical. All right. What's left? All right. So it was either electrical, industrial, or civil. So I went the double E route and kind of never looked back. And for grad school, I pivoted slightly towards the engineering management side of the house, right? To combine a little bit of the MBA program and engineering focus. And now I'm more or less in that path. No regrets, but I think if I had to do it again, I'd probably stick to aeronautical and maybe go the Air Force ROTC route. Yeah.
Okay. Wow, great. Thank you. All right. And Carolyn, if you want to wrap it up for this question for us, I'll hand it over to you.
Can everyone hear me okay? I think my internet might be a little funky.
A little spotty.
Okay.
Oh, wait, now I think you're good.
Okay. Yeah, so I think I mostly knew I wanted to be an engineer, but didn't always know exactly like how. I've always really loved like math and physics. And I've always been kind of like really curious about everything. Like I want to know how everything works. I always like took my toys apart as a kid, like that sort of thing. And both of my parents are engineers as well. They worked for GE doing like aviation for years. So I kind of knew I really like math, physics, and then engineering like seemed like a good spot. And then I've always loved like kind of space and aerospace things. It always sounded really interesting. And engineering is like an awesome degree. You can do a lot with a bachelor's degree. There are a million job opportunities and like they pay pretty well. So I knew kind of going in that direction, that would be like generally I'd find something that I really like. And I definitely did when I took like orbital mechanics in junior year. I like really fell in love with that, and that's a lot of what I do, of kind of like equations of motion and flight. And then as for more like clarification with my current job, so I'm working with these trajectory models. So you're modeling every part of the missile that pertains to the flight. So you get like propulsion, the mass properties, aerodynamics, and then a lot of like controls and kind of like guidance and dynamics. So kind of all of that goes in together. I'm working just with code and like running these models, dealing with a lot of data, plotting it. And I get to use like a lot of math and like interesting methods and things. And a lot of times it is trying to like figure out why is my missile doing a backflip, that sort of thing. And I do like really enjoy a lot of the work. Oh yeah, and I got a degree in mechanical engineering and then a minor in a concentration in aerospace. I know other colleges just have an aerospace degree, but yeah.
Very good. Thanks, everyone. Okay, so I have a couple student questions. Kalani Becker, she's a high school junior, asked, what is the process like to get into your field? So we did talk about some schooling, but was there a step after college, or was there a certification process? You know, did you start at one point and work your way up, that type of thing? So we're just going to have a couple responses to this question. Let me jump back to Stuart. What was the process like getting into environmental law, or where you are now? Like, what did you do right out of college?
Right. So playing lawyer requires law school after an undergraduate education, which in most places is a 3-year program. So it requires taking, for many, if not most law schools in the country, while you're still an undergrad, the LSAT. And then based on those scores and your grades. Law school, again, there are many, many law schools. You know, I often find myself telling clients, there are more than 1.5 million practicing lawyers in the United States. There are more than 25,000 practicing lawyers in Maryland, which means an awful lot of people got to go to law school, because not all of those people ultimately practice law. So it is somewhat daunting. You need to have some reasonable academic credentials, but it really is accessible to many people. And here in Maryland, we have the University of Maryland Law School, University of Baltimore Law School, and then just down the road, a whole bunch of other schools in the DC area. So the great opportunity for law school education, law school opportunities in terms of internships and getting exposures. Maryland also has the second most lawyers per capita of any state in the country. So lawyers all live here because they want to live in Annapolis, live near the water. They want to work in Washington, DC, or they want to work for government. Those are the highest percentage of government lawyers of any state in the country. So there's tremendous opportunity should you desire to work for government. But I guess the only other comment I'd make sort of about getting here is a lot of what I think this differentiates the type of law that I do from what others do is what we do is very entrepreneurial. We invest with our clients, we participate with our clients. We buy a lot of science. We do the actual law and non-law work for our clients, which has the benefit of distinguishing environmental law from maybe some other areas of the law, but also without, again, being inappropriate, makes it very, very lucrative. It is probably one of the most lucrative areas of the law that is widely available to many attorneys. You don't have to be at a giant law firm and doing mergers and acquisitions work. There are boundless opportunities to be successful in environmental law when you work with in an entrepreneurial way with your clients. So.
Great, thank you. Laura, let me jump back to you. What was it like getting into where you are now? Like, what happened right after college? How, if you'd like to expand.
Sure. So I always loved science, had a great aptitude for it, always did well in it. And so when I found my path, eventually, I really loved my undergraduate program and got my degree in medical lab science. And then you do sit for a national board of certification exam. And so I did pass that. I had full disclosure on my second try, not my first try. Most people don't know that, but anyway, you can try up to 5 times. I passed it on the second try. And then it was a time where biotech was really coming to the forefront. And so I went to graduate school at Johns Hopkins to be able to do biotechnology. And I worked in infectious disease, and then I did vaccine development for a while. And so this degree really can take you just about anywhere you want to go. And so after that, is when I went into higher education. So I love my job. And like I said, you can do anything with this degree. You can do research, you can do development, you can work on just about anything, developing tests. Like, people don't understand that during the COVID pandemic, people with our degrees were developing the COVID tests because they previously didn't exist. So you have to really understand the vast opportunities, like to Stuart's point, for attorneys. If you have an aptitude for science and you go this route, you can do just about anything. It's a fantastic jumping off point. You don't just have to work in a hospital lab. You can do research. You can go to the CDC. You can go to NIH. You can do lots of things. I had another thought for 1 second. Oh, I have graduates everywhere. I have graduates who are working in IVF, in vitro fertilization, even. So again, it's a great jumping off point. But that was my personal journey. I started in the laboratory at a local hospital in microbiology and infectious disease, then started in vaccine development after I finished at Johns Hopkins. And then I got into higher ed. So my path has kind of meandered, but I love that.
Fantastic, wonderful. Well, kind of jumping ahead a little bit, or as part of what it might look like at the end of college and after college, Malcolm Stuckey, who is also a high school junior, how should I look for internships? So any advice you might have, or perhaps what worked for you? Miss Yvette. Yvette, would you like to jump in on that? What would you suggest as a way for looking at for an internship, or what worked for you?
What worked for me is working in the hospital as a student. I worked after my first year of nursing school, we were eligible to sit as nursing assistants. And we were allowed to work on the units and while we were in school. So after you finish the nursing assistant, or during the nursing assistant, you can work in an area in which that interests you. So if it's OB, labor and delivery, or any other unit, it's always advisable to get in on that unit while you're in school, because you get acclimated to that unit. And then once you graduate, a lot of times you work as a student, a graduate nurse. And then once you pass your state boards, your NCLEX, then most of the time they'll hire you on that unit to continue to work, because you already have the background and the knowledge. So usually it's getting in on the ground floor, even if you work somewhere else in the hospital before you finish your first year. As long as you're in the hospital, there's a plethora of things, or support and benefits that will allow you to go back to school and get an education in anything related in the medical field.
Great, that's super helpful. Ifani, do you want to chime in about advice for looking for internships, or what worked for you?
Yeah. So I think for me, it was probably a little easier than it might have been for others, right? Back when I went to Morgan, we had a gentleman named Mr. Parker, and his sole job was really to engage with industry and government organizations, and to keep track of when the internship windows and job fair windows would come about, right? So all you had to do was go on the first floor and, and walk by his office, and he had a big board of everything that was coming up. And it was as simple as looking through and taking a picture of one screen and applying, right? It may not be as easy for others, right? But so imagine you don't have a Mr. Parker, then I would say, the career fairs and job fairs are usually another good avenues. Back when I was on the government side up until 2022, we did on the spot, hiring for interns, right? So if you came to Bayer in DC, we had a number of allocations. We were authorized to, if you had the right major, and we're going looking at transcripts on the spot. So if you had the right major, really, and the right resume, you were guaranteed an internship on the spot, right? The first 30 people that check that box. So that was just one organization, right? So if you go to the NSBE conferences, right, just speaking from an engineering perspective, that's another avenue, right? That's kind of what I would say is the best bet. Wherever you are, look for the career center or the career office, or whoever's assigned to kind of monitor those things. And aside from that, look out for the career fairs that are catered to your field.
Great, fantastic. Let's wrap it up with Kathy. Do you want to share anything about your advice for looking for internships, or what worked for you?
Yeah, the one thing I would say is that sometimes it's just good to, if there's an area that you're interested in, even if a place doesn't have an opportunity for an internship, just ask somebody, say, can I go to coffee with you and just talk to you about what you do? And then then you talk about what you're interested in, and you ask them questions about what they do. And then they say, you know what, I have a friend who works here, and I think you should talk to them, or it might not happen that day, but they'll call you back, in, a couple of weeks. They're like, oh, I just, met with somebody and they told me about this opportunity. So that's one thing isn't the fact that you all are here and on this, Zoom call is really shows a lot of kind of, I guess, going in the right direction, taking advantage of every opportunity. And sometimes what you need to do is you end up getting an internship, and most often they're not paid, but it comes back to you later on. The other thing I would say is that At a lot of like and I'm really just talking for like government agencies, they have internship programs. And you can go on the website, look at, opportunities at some of these government agencies and apply through them. And you might not end up exactly where you think you want to be, but it might, it might end up being where you end up and putting you on a new path. So don't turn down an opportunity because it doesn't seem perfect.
Very good, thank you. So Alicia Mitchell, she is a college student at McDaniel. What advice do you have for interviewing? Carolyn, I mean, you are now just got a new job that's coming around the corner. What
Yeah.
advice do you have for interviewing?
Yeah, so I've actually been like interviewing for jobs recently. I think for me, like a good interview just feels like a normal, like it feels like a good conversation. So just trying to kind of like stay relaxed and just really like get to know the people that are interviewing you. One tip that someone gave me that was really useful was just kind of like writing down experiences or times that you have like just to kind of preempt some of the questions. You get a lot of like, tell me about the time that you failed, or tell me about a time that was really hard, or different projects that like you overcame something, and they'll kind of like ask for these little like anecdotes and things, and like you definitely have them. It just can help to think about them and like write them down beforehand. So I found that really useful, but otherwise just yeah, do somewhat preparation, kind of go over like I find having the general like be ready to answer, like tell me about yourself, that can be a little bit hard sometimes. You might want to just practice a few times, but overall, if you're prepared, know your experience and can speak to it, it should go well.
Great, very good advice. Well, let me put like a little spin on this question, and I'm going to give every panelist an opportunity to respond. What is the most important question you would ask a candidate? I know there are such a variety of questions, but like, what is a question that you would definitely want to ask that provides some insight that's not on a resume or not within those typical questions? So I will give everybody a chance to share that question. Laura, let me start with you.
Sure. I would actually ask two, because most hospital laboratories and reference laboratories are incredibly busy because we are short-staffed. I would probably ask a question about how the person deals with multitasking and managing their time and managing multiple tasks at once. And my second follow-up to that would be, because you're always dealing with your peers in the laboratory, and you're constantly fielding phone calls from doctors and nurses. How are your communication skills, especially if you're under stress? How do you exemplify grace under pressure? Look for responses that would indicate that that person can handle stress and can still behave in a professional fashion.
Great. Yvette, I'll actually let you chime in next to kind of keep it on that medical avenue.
For me, one of the biggest questions would be work-life balance. How are we with work-life balance? Because if we don't have nothing is perfect, but if you don't have a good work-life balance, the life at home tends to trickle over into work. And when you're dealing with people who are at their most vulnerable, you may not get the best responses from your patient. So how you react to them is how your shift is going to go. So you have to be able to have some control over you and be able to leave work at work, leave home at home, and come in and understand that it's no longer about you. It's about that patient or that person in front of you that needs you at their most vulnerable. So basically, are you taking care of yourself outside of work? Because stress for that 12 hours or how many ever hours you're going to work, it's going to be there. and you have to know how to manage that upfront.
Great, great, thank you. Stuart, what is a question?
Very
you would
simply,
ask?
yeah, it's a question I've been asked and I ask everybody, how are you going to help us win? The nature of being a private sector attorney is you have to win. You're not really allowed to lose. Clients never want to lose. Rarely do they ever lose. If they lose, they'll have another attorney the next time. Again, remember, there are millions of us. Losing is just not an option. It's all, we may get to redefine winning occasionally, but we got to win. And most of our clients are very large businesses that, you know, if they spend $25, $30 million on a project and they lose, they probably would have rather spent 50 and won. So it's not a money thing. It's winning at all costs, winning at all times, never losing. And there's no point in associating with a business that's doesn't have that attitude and isn't prepared to win. And we certainly don't want to engage with other attorneys or other allied professionals that also don't have that same mentality of winning at all costs.
Good, very good. Kathy?
I think the question that I would ask is, I would ask the person who I'm interviewing, I would ask them to tell me about a situation where they screwed something up and how they handled it. And the reason why is because everyone makes mistakes, and it's how you handle your mistake that just shows your character and your ability to kind of pick yourself up by your own bootstraps. And one example is when I was a young associate at a big law firm, I had written a brief and I hear my boss on the phone with the prosecutor at the time, and I hear him say, "But we're not in the Supreme Court." And what that meant was I had quoted to a case that was overturned and I didn't catch it. And I thought I was just gonna melt into the floor. And I was just like, "I'm sorry, I will fix it and it won't happen again." And that's how you have to handle things. And you have to kind of eat a little crow sometimes.
Really good advice. Yeah, we all make those mistakes. Ifeanyi?
Yeah, so I think Kathy there stole one I was going to use. So I'm going to shift it, right? But before I shift, no, I think the failure one's a big deal, because what you're also looking for is some humility there as well, right? An acknowledgement of failure, and that's really where you learn. So from an engineering perspective, I don't want someone who's going to hide a failure or an error, right? Tell me now, tell me later, or I'll find out when the product isn't tested anyway. Either way, I'm going to find out. So, you know, I think that's a big one, right? Admit to your failures, admitting when you have limitations. That then allows me, as you know, as a manager, as a team leader, as the boss, to kind of, you know, identify where I think you need help, who I need to pair you with, maybe as an opportunity for growth as well, technically. But the next question that I would then ask is from a conflict resolution perspective, right? I mean, you hear all about how we've changed post-COVID, right? Folks aren't really too used to working in the office again with coworkers and such. But for me, I would ask a question and say, you know, tell me about a time where you had a disagreement with someone, you know, on a team project, or if you're in school, that'd be a class project or something to that effect, or your part-time job that you had. You know, someone at your level as a peer or maybe a supervisor, and tell me how you went about resolving that, right? Because that's going to be ever present, right? Yeah, as you bring these diverse teams together, regardless of what they're working towards, there's going to be some headbutting, right? So I kind of want to hear how you go about solving that, or how you would operate in that scenario. Yeah.
Great, thank you. So Carolyn, you were talking, you know, addressing the previous questions about preparing for an interview. Was there a specific question that you recall that you were asked, or that you would want to ask someone to really see what kind of candidate they would be? I didn't know if you wanted to chime in.
Yeah, I think we've covered a lot of them, but I think I mean, I haven't interviewed that many people, but generally the kind of seeing the more like soft skills, because with engineering, it's so technical and everyone's has a lot of technical skills, but when you have those projects or things that aren't going right, or like the timeline is a bit off, are you able to communicate with like your superiors? This isn't going to finish on time. communicating with other people, that sort of thing. So yeah, I think just the like, has there been a project that was really challenging and how did you deal with it? And then another one that's not as like professional as a question, but just the like, what's something you've worked on or a class you've taken that really excites you? Just because seeing someone's like genuine enthusiasm for like engineering is and the job is always just really good.
Great, thank you. And actually, we had a question come in on the chat from Crystal. What is a good interview question to ask the person hiring or who's interviewing you? You know, I know it's important to do your homework, prepare, know about the company and who you're interviewing, but you know, I know we're inching through our hour pretty quickly, so I don't know if maybe just a couple want to share. I might do like what Laura's doing, maybe like a little hand raise to like what would be a good question to ask the person hiring. Laura, go ahead.
I think because I have 2 kids who are graduating from college now and going through this, I think if it's important about some of the things we talked about, like Yvette mentioned, work-life balance, and if you're concerned about corporate culture, I think it's a great question to ask your interviewer. What is the corporate culture like here? You know, is this, you know, do you think this is a good place to work? You know, are you happy? You know, that just kind of things like that to kind of gauge, you know, if that's your concern.
Great. Stuart, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I think it's always good to ask if it's not a new position, where's the person who had this position that you're interviewing me for today? Where'd they go?
One more person want to chime in, or we think we're good? Go ahead, Carolyn.
I think just asking like the person what's maybe their favorite part of the job and also maybe something that's challenging about the job. I found that just asking those simple questions was like able to start a good conversation and really like learn more about what the job is actually like.
Great. So we know jobs are great, they pay the bills, you got to love what you do, but there's always good days and bad days. So if you could think of probably what you love most about your job and what the biggest challenge was. Ifeanyi, do you want to touch on that? What do you enjoy most and possibly what is the biggest challenge in your field?
Yeah, okay, so like I said, right, I'm on the solution kind of architecting side. So for me, what I enjoy the most is solving problems, right? And part of why I shifted organizations recently, this is month 3 with this new firm, is my last team, we weren't kind of aimed in that direction, right? to put it lightly. So you know, usually we're working on new problem sets, right? So you know, I engage with the customers probably on a week-to-week, month-to-month basis, or at least there's some awareness of the big problems they're trying to solve, right? So to me, that's what excites me, right? So, you know, it may take a few weeks, it may take a few months, and it may mean collaborating with a few other companies, but ultimately, I'm solving a tangible problem, right? That's going to be delivered, and I understand the direct impact of the efforts that we've put in. On this not so positive side, what frustrates me the most, I mean, you probably see it on the news, right? So when you hear like, hey, we don't have an approved budget yet, or we're operating under a CR, continuing resolution, you know, because Congress hasn't agreed on what the budget should be for the defense industry, that has like indirect impacts to us, right? So what that means is, even if I have the solution to your problem, the government office that wants that final solution is unable to like move out contractually, right? To actually fund those efforts. So that's one of those indirect things that's like contracting is always going to be frustrating. You know, the legal guys are there. I'm great. We have them. Yeah, the contracting folks, they're there, but it's like if the money doesn't happen, you know,
Yeah.
something else kind of moves. So that's probably the frustrating piece, I'd say.
Okay, great. Yvette, do you want to add anything on that? What you enjoy most and possibly the biggest challenge you
Sure.
face?
What I enjoy most is to see success, of course. Patients who may come into the hospital, like I said before, at their most vulnerable and are able to walk out or leave in a much better state because of the care that we were able to provide. Or even with what I'm doing now from home, educating patients on their disease states, helping them to overcome challenges with managing their disease, even if it's something such as diabetes. Well, their blood sugars may have been extremely high, and now we've gotten them down lower, where their 3-month test that they get is called the A1C is less than 7%, which is a lot of times where the doctor wants it. So you see the excitement in the patients, or you hear the excitement because they were able to achieve a goal that they never thought that was possible. As far as the most challenging with nursing, staffing. Staffing. That's always the most challenging, because you don't get a chance to actually, nursing a lot of times has become task oriented. It's a lot of times you don't have the time to spend with your patients to do the things that you need to do to comfort them, to educate them at the bedside. A lot of it's completing tasks, giving medications, doing this, doing that. So that becomes a lot more challenging, because a lot of times patients are just diagnosed with things and you don't have time to really sit there and teach them before they're discharged. So now there's a gap. So that becomes very challenging, because you can't do everything that that you're capable of doing.
Okay, great. Laura, I
Just-
see your hand up.
I know we're closing on time, but I want to piggyback on what Yvette said, because I thought it was really cool. She talked about hemoglobin A1C, which is really interesting. And that's a lab test that we do in the laboratory to monitor how well people with diabetes are managing their diabetes. And so just because laboratorians are not patient facing, we get to know our patients because there's a patient in every sample, and that's how we see things. And even though I'm not the nurse and I'm not dealing with the patient, the laboratory really is invested, and we follow the patients. We see, oh, this person came in really sick, and based on their laboratory data, now they're getting better, or we see them get sicker. And so we feel that, and when we make those calls to the nurses about these critical values, we're just invested as the nurses are.
Okay, great. We are ticking through this. Well, was there anybody else that wanted to chime in on that before I asked another question? Go ahead, Kathy.
The thing I would say is, the most difficult part is when you start a career. Every time, you're supposed to be an expert in something, but you're learning it as you go along. And I think there's a fear factor when you start your career that you're supposed to know everything, but you're not. And what I would say is so the best part about being able to address that is it's okay to not know what you're doing, even if you think you're supposed to. And then and my example would be is I do litigation. I go into court. I have trials. I had this one trial when I was a very young associate, and I remember I was about to go to court. And I said, if I staple my finger, I will just, it won't hurt that bad. I'll have to go to the hospital, but I won't have to go to court. There was like that fear, and that's the first time. And so, that's the beginning of anybody's career. So that's not just particular to my career. I think it's everyone's. And I'd say the best part about it is every day you do go in and you learn something new. I've been practicing now for, I don't even know, a long time, and I'm still learning something new every day. So those are it.
Excellent. Stuart, go ahead. Thank you.
I would just quickly dovetail, and I think that's a great point about, new. And one of the opportunities that certainly science-related fields and law-related to science present are there's new stuff every day. So you're not going to find an attorney who's done greenhouse gas emission work for 20 years because that work didn't exist. You're not going to find someone who's done AI-related work for 15 years because it didn't exist. So pursuing something that's new and thrilling and exciting very often both offers you an opportunity to get in on the ground floor on something new, create an opportunity for yourself, but it also tends to be among the most lucrative areas of any practice, whether it's medical, whether it's traditional science, whether it's law. Being the first in the space, it's a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to monetize on it and then set yourself up for a long career in that space.
Fantastic. Thank you, everybody. Okay, so we are just about out of time, so I have one final question. And then students, if there's any other questions that haven't been answered, we'll have a few minutes at the end if you want to ask directly, or drop them in the chat right now, and we'll try to get that right before we end at 8. But for final question, what is one thing that you wished someone would have told you during your career journey? Whether it's a comment, advice, so either what you wish somebody would have told you, or we have several high school students in here. What would you have done different in high school or college if you could go back and talk to your younger self? So you can either hit any angle, but that might be kind of our wrap-up question. Jumping back to you, Carolyn, any thoughts that you would want to share?
I think it's really just getting into a bunch of different things like sooner. Like, I wish I discovered that I really like coding a bit earlier in college and just kind of made more experiences early on. But I think also I just kind of wish I had known a little bit more about actual engineering duties. I was so nervous and having to like build a rocket myself or mess something up, and I just didn't quite understand like how much teamwork goes into everything and how there's a ton of different career opportunities, but you're going to learn so much on the job. So really just that it's going to be okay. Yeah.
Anyone want to jump in after? I don't want to pinpoint anybody who may not have the
Okay.
answer to share, but go ahead, Kathy.
I would say is you don't have to know what you want to do. That's really, your first career out of, college, if that's what it is, doesn't have to be your final career. And there are plenty of people who change careers multiple times. And if you're doing something that you think would make you happy, but it doesn't, you can change careers. That's really, I think that's kind of something that's good. People, you're graduating, where are you going to work? What do you want to do? I don't know.
Some people think that they need to land their dream job right out of college, and it just does not work that way. So, Laura, go ahead. I see your hand up.
Just one piece of very quick advice as someone who's had multiple career paths and now is in higher education. I think the biggest mistake freshmen make, and biggest mistake in even sophomores and juniors, is when you get into trouble in a course, not asking for help. Professors are there. We have all kinds of academic things that weren't in place when I went to college and wish they were. But just seek help if you need it before it gets to be too late and you become frustrated, especially if you're going to love what's going to come out at the other end, but you're having a really hard time getting there. So please just, there's always someone there to help you.
Amazing advice. Very, very true. Anyone? We have a couple minutes left. Anybody else want to go back to the younger self and wished you could have said something? Yvette, go ahead.
Don't let fear stop you. That's why I didn't become a doctor, out of fear. Don't let fear of the unknown. With nursing, the blessing for me is I can go and do any type of nursing. If I'm not comfortable here, I can go somewhere else and don't have to go back to school to do it. Nursing it's very diverse. Of course, if you want to go higher, you have to go back to school. But if I want to change specialties, I can do that. So once you get into nursing, there's a vast amount of areas that you can branch off into. So if you get into one, just know that if you decide to go into nursing, if you get in and you don't like an area, you don't have to stay there. You can always explore other areas until you figure it out. And like Carolyn said, you won't know exactly what you're doing in the beginning. You won't be, you might not understanding in the beginning, but you have the fortune, I'm sorry, you're fortunate enough to be in a career that allows you to move around and explore until you're comfortable.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you. Okay, Ifeanyi, I see your hand up. If you would like to take it home with the final response would be great.
Appreciate that. So this is something I've told my recent hires, recent grads, and sometimes the interns or the cadets we get, right? And it's to truly just consider that no one's doing you a favor by giving you a position or a job. It may seem that way, based on what they'll put you through an interview process. And sometimes, if it's a technical field, the homework that they'll make you go develop, right? Go solve this problem and come back to me, right? And kind of prove your work, right? But at the end of the day, they're not doing you a favor. They're bringing you in because you provide value, right? This isn't charity work. I mean, there is legitimate charity work, but usually this isn't it. Right, if they're going to be paying you to put in time, it's because you bring something of value to them, right? You can help them solve their problems, right? If you're over a steward, you can help them win their case, right? So think about that too. You don't have to work there. You can go work somewhere else. So from the management perspective, I'm always thinking, what can I do to make this a place where they want to be? Because they can leave at any given point. So just consider that, right? This is kind of a two-way relationship. They provide you employment and hopefully good pay, right? And benefits and such. You provide them that kind of mental capital, right? And problem solving and your connections, as you get later in your career as well, and your diverse experiences, right? So just keep that in mind as you progress through. And hopefully if you find yourself, kind of doubting your space, right? Or your presence in that space or the value you bring to the team, just consider, right? You're there because someone else aside from you is recognize the value that you potentially bring. And if they start treating you less than that, then reevaluate. Maybe it's time to be somewhere else.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Well, I know we are at 8:01, but I apologize, Stuart. I might have missed your hand. Is
Oh, it's
there
fine.
something? Are you sure?
No, the only point I would
Wrap
make
us
very
up with a
quickly is,
final note.
I would just say the only final point I would make is, despite the fact that we're all having this conversation in Central Maryland, it's a big planet. It's a big world. I would urge you not to feel geographically constrained to staying where you are. Maybe sometimes it's a little hard to get out of your box, but the vast majority of work that I've done in the last 20 years is not in the United States, certainly not in Baltimore. And I grew up here and started practicing law here. So there are vast opportunities in nearly all professions across the globe, and just the opportunity to get out while you're young enough to see what those opportunities are is really something I would urge everybody to find some way to do at some point.
Awesome. That actually was a great wrap up. Thank you very, very much. Guys, we're out of time. Thank you to the students who have joined us tonight, our panelists. Wow. I mean, the information and expertise and guidance and thoughts, I mean, really a priceless gift tonight for the students and for the ones who couldn't attend, that we will share the recording with them as well. So thank you. Students, I think Ms. McKeel is going to put a survey in the chat. Would love your feedback. This is our first time with this, so we'd love to hear if you got a lot out of this and what you liked about it. And panelists, thank you again. I actually will follow up with an email with a little survey, very short for you. What did you think? Is there something we could have asked differently? Open to suggestions and what your thoughts were. So thank you everyone for being here. I hope everyone has a great night and a great rest of the week.
Good deal. Thank you.
Okay. Bye everyone. Thank you again.
Here, thank you.